Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. I grew up singing these words every day as an elementary school student during morning assemblies, and they came back to me recently while reflecting on the theme of this year's conference: liberty, independence, freedom, and equity. It is the Black National Anthem, of course, by James Weldon Johnson. Now, I lost my voice earlier this week because I got caught in the rain a few times. And so I wanted to spare you all the agony of listening to me sing and decided to just go with a more poetic approach. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Justice Shorter. I am a Black, blind, lesbian woman with natural hair styled in a mohawk. I am coming to you today from Washington, D.C., and my pronouns are she/her. I am using multiple forms of assistive technology and have opted not to be on camera because I have one device listening to the Zoom room in one ear, and I have another device listening to my laptop and my content in another ear. However, there is tons or ample amounts of material of me online, what I've been told, that are pictures, and some of them are embarrassing family photos, but others are inclusive of photos and footage where you can match my voice with my face if that is something you are inclined to do. We are coming together this afternoon at the end of a week filled with celebratory events commemorating July 26, 1990, the very day the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law. So it's been a week filled with wonderful conversations and convenings. My comments today were inspired by and are in appreciation of the fierce folks who comprise NCIL's BIPOC committee in their efforts to consistently center the experiences and expertise of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color with disabilities. As we round out this year's annual conference, I want to do so by grounding us in gratitude. Gratitude for those who came before us, those who show up beside us, and for those who will come after us. In this sense, we are quite literally surrounded by miracles and magic, truth and good trouble, purpose and possibility, acceptance and collective accountability. Even when we feel most alone, we are still surrounded. There is both power and love in this knowingness, but power without love is abusive, and love without power is ambivalent. This comes to us by way of Adam Kahane, who has a book fittingly titled Power and Love. And I paraphrased it a little bit because he uses medicalized language as metaphor, and I wanted to get away from that just a bit. So I've changed the word anemic to ambivalent, and I think it's in alignment with his true purpose for how he wishes the content to be used and observed. But the book explains how power is expressed through things like growth, purpose, and self or collective realization, right? Those are typical expressions of power. While love, not the romantic sense, but love in this sense, focuses on new openings, potential, opportunities, and nurturing, right? So for example, to love people of color with disabilities, that love must be paired with the power to access and realize aspirations, as well as avenues for growth in the pursuit of personal and collective purpose. And to be in power comes with the added responsibility of loving our communities enough to consistently create new openings, cultivate potential, and remove barriers to opportunities. We often refer to power and love as the driving forces behind our quest to obtain liberty, independence, freedom, and equity for all people with disabilities. But how do we utilize these forces on a day-to-day basis to center the most marginalized among us? When I am most discouraged, I seek out daily affirmations by absorbing the actions of the warriors and world builders who are no longer asking for permission to proceed with focusing on the concerns and interests of our people, particularly Black, Indigenous, and other people of color with disabilities. Recently, I even found myself rejoicing rejoicing in the knowledge that multiple things can be true. As people of color, we can be deeply committed to liberation, equity, and justice while simultaneously refuting the notion that our entire existence or value must only revolve around repeatedly responding to racism and ableism. Because Toni Morrison taught us that racism is a distraction. It keeps us in a position of having to perpetually explain our very reality and prevents us from doing the things we truly wish to do, like implementing the beautifully imaginative things that broaden, bridge, and brighten pathways where we can all have enough space and support to breathe deeply. So many of us are weary and hurt from having to stay woke, on alert, and hypervigilant, not to carelessly provoke controversy, but as a means of self-protection against anyone who wields and weaponizes their power to coerce marginalized populations into compliance. This type of power is exploitative, and it is devoid of love. It closes off openings and ignores potentials and denies well-earned opportunities. For power without love is abusive, and love without power is ambivalent. I want to acknowledge the people of color with disabilities who have been and continue to be habitually harmed and traumatized throughout this community. There is a book that was written by Stacey Haynes, and it's called The Politics of Trauma. It encompasses one of the most clear and concise definitions of trauma I have ever encountered. And it describes the term as an experiences, or the impact of social conditions that break or betray our inherent need for safety, dignity, belonging. As has already been well expressed for years, many people of color came and currently come to disability rights organizations or to the disability movement, looking for a home, a space to belong, a space to gain a sense of safety, a space that would honor their dignity, but instead were met with manipulation masquerading as meaningful inclusion. In both civil rights and disability rights spaces, we talk about discrimination by delay. But tethered to that same thread is delay with an intent to distract, discredit, or eventually dismiss attempts at intersectional advancements within policies, programs, and frameworks and practices. Such harms can be observed through the stories of individuals who were deterred from career advancement, denied continuing education, and disciplined for simply exposing inequities. To talk about harm is to also talk about healing. And to talk about healing is to talk about accountability. And to talk about accountability is to talk about actionable change. No individual or organization can take accountability without also taking action, for both must move in tandem to truly be effective. Accountability must be accompanied by action. When it comes to achieving equity, the success of those actions is measured most accurately by those who have been the most marginalized. Our siblings who have been harmed are worthy of real reparative options. Reconciliation can never be reached if attempts at repair are rooted in retribution. Harm can't be adequately repaired while it is actively being repeated. And those who are on the receiving end of harm can no longer be expected to endure circular conversations that fail to result in concrete actions. There is a wonderful blog and body of work called Leaving Behind Evidence by Mia Mingus. And Mia teaches us about actionable accountability in the 4 phases of an apology, which consist of things like reflection, the actual apology, amends and repair, which is often a step that people like to overlook and then run right past. And then the last, of course, is behavioral change. So when we say we've made changes, is it the changes that the people have been calling for? Or is it merely an illusion based on the things that people in power have unilaterally decided would be the best option? Remember, power without love is abusive, and love without power is ambivalent. This work is hard, but it is also full of hope. And when I think about hope, it brings me to one of my absolutely favorite quotes, and it comes to us by way of Miriam Kaba, exceptional abolitionist and who's doing work in a number of spaces around transformative justice and prison abolition, and has a great book, if you want to check it out, called We Do This Till We Free Us. But the quote is simply this: hope is a discipline. It is a discipline. It is something that must be practiced on a day-to-day basis. So I hope we will allow ourselves to be in awe of each other, as we are quite literally the embodied legacies of our disabled ancestors. So many of our lives have also been influenced by individuals who never identified as being disabled, yet they showed us via their very existence how to survive and move through a world that has historically devalued our safety, dignity, and belonging, especially when our bodies and our minds were deemed as anything that even resembled undesirability or difference. It is precisely because of these ancestors and these individuals that we know now that our collective progress can't be predicated on performative solidarity. And that's something that really shifts based on what's trendy, right? But we want to make sure that it's actually focused on what is needed for our communities to survive and thrive. So in other words, we didn't come to visit. We live at these intersections. We're not new to this, we true to this, as is often said. With every new crisis, it becomes more clear that preparedness is paramount to our collective survival, but so too is pleasure. Even as we seek shelter from these rainy days, we must equally ready ourselves to recognize and revel in the glory of sunny days ahead. While on the subject of sunshine, I also want to take a moment to amplify a few lineages and guiding lights, which I strive to update often, since I am always learning and evolving from the offerings of others. And I encourage you all to join me in this. I believe the hashtag for this conference is hashtag NCIL 2021. So if there are other people of color, both with and without disabilities, who work within and inside and outside of disability spaces who you want to amplify, please use this moment to do so via social media using the hashtag NCIL 2021. And I certainly cannot get through all of them. There is literally hundreds, and we simply do not have the time. But I will just amplify a few with the hope and the expectation that you will join me in filling this out even more. But I wanted to do this to lead us towards the work of people who are already in the trenches and who have been doing these initiatives and who have been doing this work for quite some time, right? So I encourage you all to go and check out their work and learn from them and follow their leadership, right? So of course, I would be remiss if I did not start off with Sins Invalid. If you have not already done so, please check out Skin to the Bone, which is a disability justice primer. I often look to the work of Leah Lakshmi Peepsna-Samarasinha because her book, Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice, quite literally changed my life. And Leah has also done a tremendous amount of work around transformative justice as well. I think about the National Alliance of Multicultural Disabled Advocates. Shout out to Carrie Gray and everybody who's doing work in that space. I think about Sandy Ho and everybody who is a part of the organizing team for the Disability and Intersectionality Summit. I think about Talila T.L. Lewis, Dustin Gibson, and everyone over who is a part of the HERD team. Everything Alice Wong touches and the Disability Visibility Project. I think about organizations that are outside the traditional disability spaces, such as Critical Resistance, Women of Color Against Violence or Insight, Generation 5, Song, Sick of It, a disability inside outside project. Please check that out. Has some wonderful things coming from there, and Pen Pal project, so that you can be activated and engaged with people who are currently incarcerated. Once again, liberation is a part of this year's theme. So connecting directly with the people who are imprisoned and who are in carceral conditions is one step closer towards gaining further connectivity and community. I think about the NCIL BIPOC Committee, who will soon be circulating a letter advocating for additional actions and to raise additional awareness. I want to point to Aurora Levins Morales and Medicine Stories, which is a phenomenal read. In case you have not, please check it out. I think about folks like Adrienne Marie Brown, again, who does work outside of traditional disability spaces, but who is also trying to do it in a holistic way, encompassing multiple marginalizations and intersections, and has a few books called We Will Not Cancel Us, Pleasure, Activism, and Emergent Strategy. Also think about people like Prentice Hemphill, who has a wonderful podcast called Finding Our Way, and actually has taught me one of the best definitions around boundaries, which they describe as the distance between loving you and loving me simultaneously. And so when I think about people of color with disabilities who may say that I love this community enough to engage once a week, because anything above that is emotionally taxing. So I love this community enough to be here once a week, but I also love myself enough to only show up once a week, because I also want to make time and space for my children. I also want to make time and space for other hobbies. I also want to make time and space to simply sit and breathe and be and reflect, and to meditate or pray or listen to music or eat good food or kiki on the phone with my girlfriends, right? So we want to make space for people to show up holistically. And to do that, it's also important to be mindful of the boundaries that people have. Because to be in community is to also be in love. And that realization, that growth, that purpose, there is power. We need loving power, and we need powerful love, because power without love is abusive, and love without power is ambivalent. Let us reorient our thinking around resilience to lessen the emphasis on personal endurance, so that we can enhance our efforts around improving social conditions and meeting critical and material needs. Much of my work focuses on disasters and emergencies. I find infinite inspiration and guidance from nature. As we close out this year's conference, I urge us to do so with the tenacity of trees. Some trees in hurricane-prone regions intertwine their roots to withstand impending winds. They tend to grow together, with no one tree rising above the collective canopy, because to do so would be to reject communal protection and risk unnecessary exposure to the elements. No one person or organization will save us. There has been so many concurrent crises hitting us over the past few years. So when you feel as though you have nothing else to give, at the very least, please give yourself some grace. You deserve time to grieve and sufficient space to grow. Find those who are similarly rooted and hold on to each other, because when we weather the storm together using our collective power and love, we are all far more likely to survive. Thank you. Rima, I'm gonna pass it back over to you.
Oh, wow. This is Rima talking. Thank you so much, Justin. That was incredible. You are incredible. What you just shared with us is incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you.